Alright, so in this video, I'm going to be talking about harmonies, what they are, and how to find them, because that was one of the biggest questions I had when music was a little newer to me. And so I'm going to start with the basics, just explaining what a harmony is. So, harmonies are when you have a melody playing, a harmony is a note that kind of matches with that melody, the melody note. And to understand harmonies, it's really helpful, crucial to understand intervals and chords or triads, um, because those are the notes that go together. So let's take a chord and create an example around that. So if I were to take the chord of C, I have three notes. I have C, which is my number one, E, which is my third interval, and G, which is the fifth interval. And I'll have other videos that get into the details of that. But for now, just know that there are different intervals based on the scale, and a chord consists of the 1, 3, and the 5. Sometimes it could be the 7 too, but for this lesson we're going to stick with just 3 because that's the one that's more common. So in a chord, our number 1 note is going to be the melody. And then our second notes, our 3 and our 5, those are going to be the harmony notes. So if I'm playing the melody, if I want to add a harmony or 2 harmonies, that's what creates the harmonies together with the root note create that full triad sound that you'll hear. Now sometimes you might have a different chord, maybe a sus2, sus4, or like I mentioned, 7. And so in that case, every note that you play, the 2 that are not the first note, those are going to be the harmonies. So you want to keep that in mind too when you're creating a harmony. Now, something that is very important is being able to hear those intervals. So when I listen to a song, I'm going to be hearing the melody, whatever the note is that happens to be sung or played for the melody. I should be able to hear what a 3 would sound like, what a 5 would sound like. 3, 5. And so just listening to harmonies, listening to chords, something that's really going to help you is by listening to songs, listen to the melody, but then start to try and pick up the harmonies. If you can find a song where there are background singers who are singing the harmony, those are some of the best ones you can listen to. So what you'll do is you'll try to hear the harmony, what that background singer is singing, and then once you can hear the harmony, start singing that with them and pay attention to how that sounds in comparison to the root note. And you'll start to develop this ear for what a third or fifth interval sounds like. And so practicing singing harmonies with someone else, singing them out loud, is going to do a lot for your brain. It's going to help make that process of learning quicker if you're actually able to sing it out. And then once you're competent, comfortable singing the harmony with the background singer or whoever's singing that harmony, then try to pick it out yourself and see if you can sing a harmony along with any melody you hear. Or if you do instruments, you could play it too, but singing is always the best way to do it. So with that in mind, ear training is super important. It's one of the most important things, and it's something that can and should be paired with the music theory side, which is what I'm going to get into now. So you really want to be able to bring in both the music theory and the knowledge of how music works, but also your ear and what you're hearing, because the best way to create harmonies is to do those together. You want to understand how they work and be able to write it out, but in the end, those harmonies that you write out, you want to make sure that they sound good too. So now we're going to go over to some sheet music, and I'll show you how I would create a harmony myself or write it out. And I have this one here. I had it for another project where I was writing some harmonies for this, and so I just thought, might as well use it in this example. I also like it because we won't get into a lot of the colorful stuff in this lesson. I just want to do the basics, keep it simple, but a lot of hymns and older Christmas songs do have a lot of colorful notes and harmonies and chords in them, which is why they can be fun, but also sometimes challenging to work with. And so, as we start, there are a few things I want to point out that might be important to know. And so here, we're going to start at the very beginning of the song. You'll see that we have our key signature right here. And that's really important because it will tell us what notes we have to work with. So in this example, we have 3 sharps, which means we are in the key of A, and our notes that are going to be sharp are going to be C, F, C, and G. So if I were to put that on a scale, those are the notes that we're working with. So when we create our harmonies, we want to try and stay within that scale, use those notes that I just played. Now there are sometimes instances where a harmony might be written outside of the scale. Oftentimes that might come when the melody is also written outside of the scale. So stuff like that does happen, and it's just an artistic expression. So there are no super strict absolute rules that you have to stick within the key signature, but if you deviate outside of it, most of the time it's not going to sound good. So if you do deviate outside, just be sure that you're doing that very intentionally, that you're only doing it on a few select notes. You're doing it for a purpose, and it's probably because you're wanting to create some sort of clashing or dissonant sound. So those are just some important things to keep in mind. Majority of the time, I stick within the key signature that I'm working in, that the song is that I'm working in. So the next thing that's important to notice are that we have some chords written up top here. And those are helpful to keep in mind too, because as we create harmonies, we want to be aware of when a note we choose is matching up with the chord and when it's not. The ones that match up with the chord are generally gonna fit in better. They're gonna sync up better, flow better. But again, that's not always gonna be the case. fairly often the melody, the notes that are in the melody will match one of the notes in the chord, but that is not always the case. There are plenty of times where you'll see the melody is a note that doesn't exist in the chord, it's being played over. And so the harmony does not have to fit within the chord. Sometimes it can, but when it does, knowing when it does and when it doesn't can be a very helpful tool. Um, and it'll give you options for the kind of sound you want to create. And I'll go into that a little more detail in a second when we get into this. So we're going to start choosing some harmonies, and I'm not going to go through this entire sheet, just maybe just a few notes here. So we're going to start at the beginning. Our chord is A, so that includes an A, C sharp, and E. That's what we're playing over. Our melody note is a C sharp. So you can see that one fits within the A chord, those match together. So we have our C, all three of these notes are C sharp. So we're going to be creating harmonies based off of the C sharp triad. So C sharp is our 1, E is our 3, and G sharp is our 5. So these are the notes we have to work with. So for my harmony, I already have C sharp as the melody, so my harmony I can either choose an E or G sharp. If I play those together, I'll play the melody, just those 3 notes in the first bar, to get so we know the rhythm. And then let's choose the E to begin with, the 3, and play those together and listen to how it sounds. Or if we chose G sharp as our harmony instead, you can already hear there's a difference between the two. And so the one you choose is going to be based on the feeling, the emotion, the sound that you're going for, which is why knowing your intervals really helps. Another thing I'm going to bring chords back into this so we can see how it all works together. So you'll notice that the A chord has both a C sharp and an E. So if I play the E over that, you can hear those also fit pretty well. Whereas if I played a G sharp, it's a little different. It stands out a little more than the E does. So this is where chords come in. You can try each of those against it and see which one fits better. So I think I'm going to start, so I could either play them all the same, or I could do all G sharp. But I could also choose to start with the E, maybe for my first 2 notes, and then switch to G, or vice versa. So if I did start with E, that is an option too. Most of the time, I'm going to stick with the same note, the same harmony. So if my melody is all that same note, I'm going to stay the same. I'm going to choose either all E's or all G sharps. Most of the time, that's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to switch around. I'm just going to pick one note and stay with it as long as the same melodic note is being played. That's especially if you're doing multiple harmonies, multiple instruments, multiple singers. Typically, that's going to work out best. But of course, you could always get creative. So I could choose, instead of doing just 3 E's, I can maybe do 2 E's and a G sharp. And this would work better if I'm just creating one harmony rather than multiple ones. So for the sake of this example, just so we are able to see different options, I'm going to stick with 2 E's, and the last one's going to be a G sharp. So that one's going to be my first E, second one here, and then I'm going to end with a G sharp over here. All right, so that's that harmony is this one here. Now going back to the triad, I just want to make another note here. We are working with these notes because they sound best together. I could choose maybe a D sharp or something different. And in other certain circumstances they might work. The B actually can work fairly well because it'll create what would become a 7 chord. So these other options do work, but you also have to be mindful of, again, the sound you're going for in the chords. So for example, if I played maybe that C sharp and a D sharp, first of all, the D sharp isn't even in the key we're playing, so it's going to sound more dissonant, and it doesn't match very well with the chord either. So that's another example of where you could move outside of the triad, and most of the time it may not work well, but sometimes it could. I do want to point out that this B though, because that creates a 7 chord, and so that one actually can work. It'll create a sound with more tension. It can be very beautiful when it's done in the right place. Again, it's not going to be my default. Most of the time I'm, like I said before, I'm sticking with the 3 and the 5 interval, but that B, that 7, could be a very fun, colorful option to go for if you want to explore a little bit, if you're creating your own, if you're creating something unique. So if I'm trying to support a melody, I'm likely not going to go there with the B unless it happens to be in the chord that I'm playing, which in this case it's not. All right, so let's move on to the third bar, and we're gonna try some different notes with a different chord. Right here we have some F sharps, then a D, then we go back to F sharp, and this is all over the D chord. So this is our chord, and F sharp is our first melody, so we got the first 2 notes. They're in F sharp. So just like we did before, I'm going to take this down an octave so you can, just for a second, so you can see. So our third and our fourth, our third and our fifth are going to be A and C sharp. So these are the notes that we can use to build our harmony. F sharp is already the melody, so it's going to be one of those two. You'll notice that the D chord also has F sharp and A. So if I wanted to keep things more together, I might choose an A. That fits the chord. C is outside of the chord, so it'll just give maybe a slight bit more of tension. It might stand out just a little more. So these first two notes, I want to stick with an A for the harmony. And I'll move it up an octave, play that with the chord. And I like that. I really love that sound. The alternative that I could play would have been, which for me, I like this sound better than that one with the chord. So we're gonna put two A's there to harmonize with the F or F sharp. All right. Another thing I'd like to note too is that you can also invert these harmony notes. So I could play F sharp and A here, or I could invert and go down an octave for the A. And you could play either one of those. So let's move on to the D. And this one's pretty easy, right? Because we're playing D over D. So all the chords that are in the D chord, we have those to work with for the harmony as well. So I could either do F sharp or A. Figure out which one I like better. I think for the sake of making things a little different, I already did some A's, so I'm gonna move down and do an F sharp as the harmony with this D. And so if I were to play those together, that's what it would sound like. Versus alright, so we have one more note in this bar and we're going back to F sharp. So I can choose the A again, like I did before. And if I was creating two separate harmonies for two different background vocalists or two different instruments, I probably would choose A. But to kind of help the learning experience get a little more creative here, if I was doing a separate project where I really wanted to highlight the harmonies some more, get a little more, what's the word I'm looking for? Get a little more experimental, do something a little different, I might choose the C sharp instead. So for this last one, I think that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna play a C sharp as the harmony for this last note. And that's gonna be the fifth interval. So everything else in this bar that I've done so far are all third intervals. So this one is kind of changing things up, shaking things up, bringing, adding a little more interest because now we're adding a fifth interval instead of a third. So I'm kind of taking that last note and just doing something different with it. So if I were to play those last two, take it down an octave where you can see it better, and I'll do the D chord way over. That's our final note. So if we play these all together, I'm going to work in this octave, I think. We started with an F for a melody, then we went down to a D. So we had for our melody, I'm going to take it back up here. And then our harmony, we had A, and then we went down to D, and then C sharp. So if you notice, we kind of went down. I could also have created a harmony where maybe it would have gone up, maybe it would have stayed the same. Or, well, we'll not get into too much. You have the idea. So this is the option I chose. And so if we were to play that together, we'll see if I can play three things in the screen where you can hopefully see it all. So we're gonna play that melody, try to play the melody and the harmony along with the chord. So that's a harmony we created. And again, like I said before, there are alternatives, lots of alternatives, as long as, for the most part, you're sticking with the triad of whatever note that the melody exists in. So again, where the melody is C sharp, your harmonies are sticking within that triad. If the note is D, we're sticking in that triad. For F, we're sticking in that triad, with the little exceptions I mentioned. So that is an overview of creating melodies, how you can use both music theory and your ear to create them. Both of them are important, and it's important to know why you're creating the harmony, because that'll determine how simple, how basic you keep it, or how colorful and over the place you make it. So that's where the ear is super important. You always want to make sure that the notes you're playing in the end, that they all sound together, they all sound good together, they all work together. So that was my harmonies lesson, basic harmonies lesson, and I hope that was helpful for you.